Ladies and gentlemen, 10 years ago, Leon Schreiber, a PhD student in Berlin at the time, was a finalist in this global essay competition and joined us as a leader of tomorrow here in St. Gallen. Today, Leon Schreiber is Minister of Home Affairs of the Republic of South Africa. To all leaders of tomorrow in the room, this is by no means meant to put any pressure on you. Leon Schreiber is joined by Minna Stalder and Malik Ourari, who are as part of the 54th International Students Committee, responsible for this year's 200 brilliant young minds, our leaders of tomorrow. So, welcome back to St. Gallen, Minister Schreiber.
Thank you, Charlotte, very much, and a warm welcome to this year's Global Essay Competition award ceremony. Before we begin with the actual ceremony with our 3 finalists, let's take a brief look into the past. Minister Schreiber, a decade ago, you took the 2nd place in the Global Essay Competition. The audience and I are really curious. What path did you take after leaving the stage here in St. Gallen?
Well, let me just start by saying it's such a wonderful privilege to be back here at St. Gallen. Not only was this an important moment on my professional journey, but I also met my wife here. So to all the leaders of tomorrow, there are wonderful benefits out of this event. I think also the other thing that stands out for me today is the excess of grey hairs that didn't exist 10 years ago. And I think that is a testament, actually, to how this event and the path and journey that followed from it has really been one of enrichment. And I think today, I'm 36 years old, still one of the youngest ministers in the history of South Africa, certainly. And it is amazing to come back and see full circle how this event has grown and how it has contributed, not only to myself, but so many of the other alumni that I've even met here today. So it's wonderful to be back. It's been a crazy journey. You can't give me 10 minutes and ask me about the journey. All I can say is that this is a unique event. And if you are one of the finalists, one of the participants, this is a moment you will look back on 10 years from now in your journey.
Also from my side, it's a pleasure to welcome you back to St. Gallen. When you first came to the St. Gallen Symposium 10 years ago, what emotions and expectations did you carry with you?
I think when you are participating for the first time, you are a little bit awestruck, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed, but I think the great thing about this event is how quickly that actually makes place and makes way for excitement. Once you start interacting with the participants around you, and once you realize the amazing array of talent that actually sits in this room today, both from young people and from those more experienced leaders, I think that very quickly breaks it down. So that was really, I think, the initial emotion, being from South Africa, studying in Germany, and now finding yourself in Switzerland is quite a ride. But I think for anyone who's feeling a bit anxious still today, I think by this evening you'll definitely start relaxing and make sure that you make the most of it, because that emotion, as you said as we were walking up, that anxiety is actually just excitement waiting to get out.
As a minister, you're always confronted with new ideas and demands from the younger generation. Be honest, do you sometimes believe that these ideas are too idealistic and detached from the political reality?
I don't think so, and I think in my particular case, and I think we'll talk more about it when we speak a little bit in more depth, one of the greatest things that I've realized upon coming into office, which only happened 10 months ago when South Africa had a really earth-shattering election result. We had our first change of government ever as a democracy, and we now have a multi-party coalition, whereas we previously had one-party domination. One of the first things I realized is how bringing a more youthful perspective can actually address problems that people had given up on. And so in my space, in the space of Home Affairs or any interior ministry, think about the enormous benefits that technology brings. And what you find when you walk into a space like that is, paper-based processes, backlogs, mountains of files, and I think bringing a youthful perspective. And people have called me obsessed. They've called me, frantic and frenetic about what we can do if we unlock technology. But I fundamentally believe that. And I think that for Africa, for my country, but really for the whole world, it's amazing to see personally, up close, how generational change can actually lead to fresh and new ideas. So I would disagree with the premise that says that it's idealistic or it's too naive. We need more naivety. We need more idealism in a world that we confront today.
I'm sure everybody here in this room is familiar with the notion that we become more pragmatic and less disruptive as we get older. You already hinted at it a little bit, so would you say that this is not true for you?
No, I don't think so. I think there's definitely a combination of qualities that you need. But I think the one risk that you run, and again, it goes back to the beauty of democracy. It goes back to the beauty of change, is that in our case, my political party has been in opposition for 30 years during this democracy. It was in opposition to apartheid for 30 years before that. It's always been an opposition party. And suddenly, now you have change. And you have that enthusiasm because there are people who have been working for decades, quite literally, and you're building on the road that they have blazed. And now you have the opportunity to make an impact. And I think what happens, pragmatism, but I think when people become too comfortable, when they think that they'll always be in positions of authority and that there's almost no stakes for them anymore, that's where complacency does sit in. So I think it's a great thing. It is a vindication and a virtue of democracy that you can have change, that you can have people who are actually hungry, who desire to make change, who can come in. And I think it's even better when they're not quite that old yet.
So you would say you're still destructive in that sense?
Disruptive, I would say.
Yeah, disruptive, sorry.
But I think hopefully not destructive. I think what is important to also say, though, is even as you shake things up, even as you bring a desire to implement change, that you must build those human relationships. And you mustn't do it in an irresponsible way. You mustn't do it in a way that seeks to achieve anything other than that which you are setting out to do. So in our case, if you want to massively leapfrog through technology away from what we have and the things that keep South Africa back into the future, you must do that in a way that brings people along. And I do think that is where the wisdom of experience and actually knowing how to work with people is fundamentally important. So I don't think it's a bombastic, destructive thing, as you say. It must be encouraging, it must be exciting, but above all, it must take people along and show them this is what the future can look like if we work together.
Mm-hmm. Well, as someone who's still quite young, it's difficult for me to truly anticipate how my views will change, but it's certainly important to think about how our convictions change as we get older. And Malik and I, previously, we were talking about how a key part of good leadership is actually the ability to really put yourself in the shoes of others, and that leads us to our final question.
A question for both the senior leaders and the leaders of tomorrow in this room. The Voices of the Leaders of Tomorrow report, which Charlotte mentioned earlier, has shown that there is a real gap on how senior leaders and leaders of tomorrow perceive cross-generational collaboration in leadership, where on one side, the senior leaders believe that there is already enough collaboration between the generations. The majority of the leaders of tomorrow disagree. Minister Schreiber, you have a unique perspective as you're bridging both worlds. What piece of advice would you give the audience here today on how to build real cooperation between the generations?
I think the most important point as a leader is to never assume that you've reached some kind of end point, whether it's your company, your organization, or indeed your state and your government. Never assume that you've reached a desired end state. And I think once you make that assumption, once you think that this is the way things are, this is the way they've always been, and that's why this will always be the way that they will continue to be, I think that is the moment in which you are actually no longer serving, whether that's shareholders or citizens. And I think that more than just the question broadly about whether you need to have intergenerational exchanges within your organization, the question really is about whoever the leader is, whether they are young or more experienced. Are they people who have reached this kind of end state, have lulled themselves into this belief that things are fine because this is just the way we do it? And I think once you reach that point, that is where disruption is needed. That is where the contribution of people with new perspectives, I think, can make a difference. And I hope that over the coming few months and years, that South Africa will actually become more of a case study of what can happen through the renewal that democracy brings in any society.
I'm sure everybody here hopes for the same, and you certainly are a perfect example of a former leader of tomorrow who has grown to be a leader of today. We are so honored to have you here at the St. Gallen Symposium for the full 2 days of the conference, and are very much looking forward to tomorrow's plenary session on this very stage. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Am I going off now?
After this interview, you might still be wondering, who exactly are these 200 leaders of tomorrow? And should you be worried that they're here to take your job? Half of the leaders of tomorrow were carefully selected by members of our team. These are exceptional young people. They are innovative entrepreneurs, engaged politicians, and socially responsible individuals. If you want to check out your potential successors, just look out for people wearing a yellow badge. That's how you can recognize a leader of tomorrow.
The other half of the leaders of tomorrow were selected for our global essay competition, in which young, brilliant minds showcased their innovative ideas for the most pressing challenges of our time. In this year's essay competition, we have received around 1,000 submissions from 120 countries. These essays were reviewed in multiple rounds by our academic jury, made up of 50 PhDs and postdocs from the University of St. Gallen and the ETH Zurich. I would like to take the moment to give special thanks to Professor Heike Bruch, which led the academic jury, as well to Professor Georg von Krock, which was part of the final selection with the top 3. Thank you very much.
As you can imagine, it takes a significant amount of effort to organize one of the biggest essay competitions in the world, and Malik and I did not accomplish this on our own. With that, it's my pleasure to welcome the 2 remaining truly fantastic members of our team onto the stage, Fabiola and Sandro. Sandro, you traveled across the Americas promoting the global essay competition. What was your highlight on your journey?
Wow, that's quite a difficult question. I had the opportunity and the honor to visit 4 different countries during my travels, but the city that stood out to me was really Buenos Aires. Unbelievable people, unbelievable weather, and the Friday night out was also quite fun. Fabiola, you did the same as I, but in Europe. What was your highlight there?
I mean, I got to see 14 cities, so I also saw a variety of culture and food. And I remember when I arrived in Estonia, in Tallinn, I got greeted with an elk soup. It was really special, but also really delicious. Now, Malik, you traveled across Asia. What was your highlight?
So my highlight was definitely to see how engaged previous leaders of tomorrow are. So over the different countries, I really have received a lot of support. One is, for example, for a pitch. I had 20 pitches in 2 hours in India, and I was supported by a leader of tomorrow, which really was a crazy experience. Minna, I'm curious, 50 years from now on, what memory will stay with you after with the St. Gallen Symposium?
So I was responsible, or part of my responsibilities was organizing the visas and the flights for our leaders of tomorrow. And as you can imagine, that's quite a tedious process, which I'll definitely remember 50 years from now. But I'll definitely also remember the touristic day, which we celebrated, or which we had 2 days ago with the leaders of tomorrow. It was so nice to see that these leaders of tomorrow have actually managed to come to Switzerland, and also to see that the efforts of the team have come together.
Thank you, Minna and Malik, for moderating the first part with the interview of Leon Schreiber and introducing the leaders of tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we are very excited to continue with one of our key highlights of the 54th St. Gallen Symposium, the Global Essay Competition Award Ceremony. Each year, students from around the world are invited to respond to a thought-provoking question, one that changes annually to reflect the theme of the St. Gallen Symposium. And as this year's topic is shifting global power, this year's essay question is, global power is shifting. What's your innovative idea to address a related risk or opportunity?
The goal of this question was to inspire bold and creative thinking, to uncover fresh solutions to the challenges and opportunities of a changing global landscape. Our academic jury, responsible for reviewing all submissions, were on the lookout for extraordinary ideas, whether they tackled global challenges or offered community-based insights.
And now, we are very excited to introduce 3 students whose essays really impressed our jury. So please join us in giving a warm round of applause to our 3 finalists, Yuhan Zheng, Eduardo, Brito, and Rezwana Rahman.
Yuhan Zheng is a PhD student in geography at the National University of Ireland, focusing on the energy transition and its impact on local communities. Interestingly, she was already among the top 100 essays 2 years ago and brings experiences in sustainability through UN work and intergenerational initiatives. A big round of applause for Yuhan.
Eduardo Brito is a security engineer and a PhD candidate in the mathematics and computer science program at the University of Tartu in Estonia, a university I had the pleasure to visit during my Europe travels. He specializes in privacy-enhancing technologies, distributed systems, and applied cryptography. Eduardo, this is your applause.
Rezwana Rahman is a PhD student in urban health at Toronto Metropolitan University, one of my highlights of my North America tour. She is also a nurse, researcher, and entrepreneur. Rezwana founded Sarasites, an AI-based, faith-based caregiving platform. A big round of applause for Rezwana.
We are very happy to have the 3 of you here on stage with us. I hope you feel excited and not too nervous, as we now turn to hearing more about your essays. For that, each one of you will have 3 minutes to pitch your essay to the audience, and after that, Sandro and I will follow up with a few questions to dive deeper into your ideas. So let's dive right in and begin with you, Yuhan. Your 3 minutes start now.
Okay, thank you, and all the leaders here. Let's do some body stretches. So raise your hand if your weather app ever promised you a sunny day, but soaked you in the rain. Yeah, thank you. This inaccuracy with global inequality and disparity is no longer a minor glitch reflecting the climate information inequality. It can become a matter of survival. When AI steps in, the gap just explodes, leaving the southern regions with lower accuracy, yet rely on over 80% of the climate-critical AI system built in the north. The root bias distorts the local ecological reality, triggering data colonialisms and also governance exclusion. Stark reality in 2020, an European-built irrigation algorithm applied during Indian monsoons led to severe agri-food losses due to ignoring the phenological knowledge locally. And those local mismatches have far-reaching impact over water, energy, and more. Still, the global south remain as the data subject, but not the climate intelligence architecture together. And even leading solution, AI localized, cannot scale, not simply due to resource deficit. The real constraint lies in our collective mindset toward a better planet future. And also, for so long, we treated the frontier technology as an external tool, inducing AI as a creative destruction against existing socio-economic systems. Therefore, AI and climate are often driven by the market and also the prediction needs, and often overlooks the agency of the localized energy innovation. Therefore, to rebalance this, we need to endogenize AI from a temporary fix to an enduring ally to our climate well-being. The journey to endogenize AI necessitates weaving the innovation into the fabric of the ecological and human wasting together. But how? 3 steps. First, mitigate the risk, enhancing the early warning systems. Second, adapt regeneratively with the cultural ecological context. And third, and also the last, reassess the equity and evolving needs of the AI-applied climate scenarios. But to further endogenize this and also to dismantle the global north's climate techno unipolarity, we need a radical reboot. So here I propose a funny name, SAICA, a Southern-led alliance of indigenous algorithm responsibility, which will need to build on the cognitive justice in algorithms and also the local data. And then the Southern community-led technology norms by shared tools, but not dependency against the similar climate extremes. And last, we need this counter-hegemonic standard setting to really rebalance the current perception power structure. And for implementation, smash the regulatory asymmetry and also the governance and resource colonialisms. As we all know, we need to launch the pilot for a sovereign and translocal climate computer systems to achieve the algorithm self-sufficiency. And then we need to institutionalize a common but differentiated responsibility in algorithms. So finally, we do know AI holds transformative potential in the climate change, but the endogenization of AI tells us that we all decided how the AI should integrate it in our joint responsibility. And we may not have all the answers, but we already know enough to sketch the contours of the AI's likely impact in our future Earth. And those contours are already taking shape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Eduardo, the stage is yours. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. Yeah, the world is shifting. New centers of economic and technological power are rising across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, redrawing the very foundations of global trust. And in this multipolar future, sovereign digital infrastructures, they are no longer a luxury. They're actually a necessity for nations seeking resilience, credibility, and autonomy. Despite this, there's still a critical feature missing, which is the ability to securely and independently prove and verify location. And this gap is not theoretical anymore. It is actually the silent enabler of election interference, supply chain fraud, financial scandals, and military misinformation. From the war in Ukraine to the Israel-Palestine conflict, from the elections in US and Brazil to the biggest European financial and supply chain scandals. Fraud and misinformation playbooks, they are being written in real time, creating a world where nations remain vulnerable in every single sector that requires digital trust. A world where not even our senses are enough. So let me challenge you. As we stand right here, right now, before you, how do you think somebody else in the future will truly believe that this speech actually happened? Because in an era of AI-generated images, synthetic videos, and deepfakes, even a speech, a presence, or a moment like this could be so realistically fabricated that the erosion of trust in our very own physical reality has indeed begun. But my proposal is clear. My experience working in Horizon Europe, European Defense, US DARPA innovation programs makes me believe that decentralized proof-of-location infrastructures must now be built as a foundational pillar of the next generation of digital sovereignty strategies. And by deploying these distributed networks of cryptographic witnesses, which are secure devices that allow to attest to the nearby presence of goods, people, other devices, reaching cryptographic consensus across both space and time, nations could indeed ensure that location claims become verifiable, tamper-resistant, and independent of external control. And this is not just about cybersecurity. It is actually about securing elections, securing supply chains, securing humanitarian aid, securing the digital authenticity and integrity of content and information that we humans produce in this AI-driven era. Restructuring a reality where trust should no longer be built on blind assumptions, but on cryptographic certainty. The challenge is immense, yes, but so is the opportunity to shape a new architecture of digital trust infrastructure for this multipolar future that is actually emerging before our eyes. Thank you.
Cryptographic witnesses.
Thank you so much. And last, but certainly not least, Rezwana, your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you so much. Esteemed innovators, scientists, leaders, and builders of the global village. When the story of this century is told, I believe one quiet question will echo louder than the others. Did we learn to care for one another as boldly as we learned to code, to cure, and to conquer? By 2050, 2/3 of the world's elders will live in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, regions already pulsing with creativity and growth. Yet the very forces that lift economies, urban migration, rising education, and global mobility, are splintering the intergenerational safety nets that once held families together. Think of the villages we may have come from, where open doors stayed ajar, elders watched children, and a pot of stew was never too small to share. Care was not a service, it was a rhythm of our daily life. Today, 76% of unpaid care still rests on women's shoulders, an uncounted labor force approximating $10 trillion a year. At the same time, millions of caregivers leave their own homes to care for strangers abroad, creating a profound care drain. Children saying goodnight through screens, and parents aging in quiet rooms, community stripped of the hands that once held them. We could accept this fracture as collateral damage of progress, or we could change the narrative. And this is my proposition. Imagine a world where technology is not a substitute for touch, but rather a bridge for compassion. A borderless platform that pairs families with culturally attuned caregivers wherever they may be. Teleconsultations that bring specialists to rural kitchens, and predictive sensors that whisper early warning signs before crises occur. Certification pathways that turn caregiving from an invisible duty into a respected and protected profession. In short, a future where care is not an afterthought, but the infrastructure of prosperity. This vision demands neither a silver bullet nor science fiction, and the digital rails already reach the last mile. What remains is the collective resolve to weave these threads, policy, technology, and human dignity, strong enough to cradle 1 billion elders and the children that will one day become them. So why does this matter to each one of us in this room? Because the dividends of care are not merely humanitarian, they are catalytic. When families are supported, productivity rises, gender gaps narrow, and innovation flourishes. The return is not measured only in currency, but in the resilience of societies and the moral authority of progress. So I invite you to lend your imagination, your influence, and yes, your ingenuity to a global renaissance of care. Let us write algorithms that honor culture, craft policies that value unpaid labor, and design enterprises that see caregivers not as a cost center, but as keystones of our human story. If we succeed, future generations will look back on this moment not as an age of division, but as the dawn of a world knit together by caring hands and connected minds, an era where progress finally moves at the speed of compassion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And let's continue just with our Q&A and begin again with you, Yuhan. Your idea relies a lot on international cooperation and trust. But in today's political climate, trust is quite fragile. Can a global solution like SAICA still succeed?
Okay, thank you for the question. But First of all, I do believe the value in the multilateral rhythm, especially in today's geopolitical tension. But I believe that because the core of the SAICA is that we need to formalize southern community norms of the technology with shared methods over the dependency, because only with shared challenges that we can have the shared solutions. So I think there are a few ways. Of course, the trust is one of the biggest problems, but when people they're thinking about the shared challenges, that they feel this kind of empathy of each other, that they can work together jointly. So I do believe that we have this kind of set in the core to provide this, and also because now countries across the world, they can gradually realize the importance of those diversifying, especially when AI comes to climate change. Just imagine if all the AI data center, they are centralized in the global north. But if when the climate extreme, they come to attach one region, well, it's think that it will still be safe, that we still have this kind of imbalance of this. So I think that kind of rebalance is also the key that to rebuild the trust. Thank you.
Additionally, your solution leverages AI to fight climate change, which sounds promising, but isn't there a risk that the carbon footprint of training and running AI models could cancel out the impact?
Yeah, thank you. This is a very interesting question. And also, in all those kind of energy transition, we are all talking about those energy consumption and its impact to the environment. So of course, International Energy Agency, they also just released its report on the current, the future landscape of the AI in the energy transition. So of course, we do need to think about the carbon footprint, and we need to have a more adaptive scheme to rebalance and also to diversifying the distributions of the AI data infrastructure. So this is why we see the value of also to collect with our neighboring regions to not have the spillover effect in all those regions, that to increase the resilience not only in climate but in our everyday life, because this is about energy security and cybersecurity and also the national security when it comes to this. Thank you.
And now over to you, Eduardo. How do you find the right balance between protecting security and respecting people's privacy in your proof of location system?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, that's actually part of my work. There's a silent revolution happening. We see everyone excited with AI, but there's also a bunch of people working behind the scenes to secure the planet through cryptographic means, digital means, through protocols that allow us to move beyond and process data in a private way that respects the fundamental rights of privacy and sovereignty of data of individuals. And I think cryptographers, mathematicians, and the rest of the people focused in securing our digital world, they'll figure it out. I think we'll find a balance between this AI revolution and the preservation of the fundamental rights of privacy of everyone.
What are the potential risks if proof of location standards are only set by a few countries?
Yeah, so my argument is that we need to establish this as a means of automating trust. As we move towards a digital world, starting with digital societies, for example, like Estonia, all the rest of the world should follow through. And that's how we'll establish cooperation through digitalized means, through protocols that allow us to automate and establish bilateral trust via programmable and verifiable ways of exchanging information and asserting facts.
Thank you, Eduardo.
And now to you, Rezwana. Many people fear a future where care is reduced to cold, mechanical interactions, so-called robo-care. How do you ensure that AI-enhanced caregiving does not dehumanize care itself?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. This essay is very much inspired by my own personal and professional experiences, and I am the founder of Sarah Sits, which is a caregiving application. And so with my team, we've had discussions about whether we wanted to integrate AI or not, but I do think that AI is very useful, but it depends on how you use it. So our intention with Sarah Sits isn't to replace care, but rather how does AI enhance care? So we have something called a care plan, CAIR care plan. And so this sort of supports students that are currently being trained by giving them a refresher of the patients that they're caring for. Oftentimes, if you're caring for somebody that has a stroke on their left side, in the textbook, it'll tell you where to place the spoon. So this AI kind of gives you a little cheat sheet beforehand. So we're optimizing safety of the clients that we're serving.
How do you ensure that your platform respects cultural sensitivities and accommodates diverse religious beliefs across different regions?
Excellent question. And again, this is very much inspired by my own personal experiences. Throughout nursing school, I worked as a personal support worker, and I often found that I was paired with someone who spoke Mandarin, and my friend was always paired with someone who spoke Bengali, which is my native tongue. And I thought to myself, one little switch would optimize care. And some would argue this might be divisive, but I would argue this actually optimizes healthcare outcomes because language is, it's important for us to connect, right? So just taking that into consideration, we have a filter option that accounts for culture and language as well as faith.
Thank you so much, and a big round of applause for our 3 finalists.
And now, the moment of truth has arrived.
Yes, it's time to reveal the winner of this year's Global Essay Competition. For that, our 2 dear colleagues will come up on stage and bring us 3 sealed envelopes containing the results.
And the 3rd place goes to Yuhan Zheng.
And the 2nd place, a big round of applause for Eduardo Brito.
And finally, the winner of the Global Essay Competition 2025 is Rezwana Rahman.
Congratulations to all 3 of you, not just for your ranking, but your boldness, creativity, and your ideas.
Yes, and thank you for inspiring all of us. Now you will have a 30-minute break, a great opportunity to reflect all the great ideas of our 3 finalists. And at 4 p.m., a variety of insight and spotlight sessions will take place, mostly in the Square building. But now, one more big round of applause to our 3 winners.